Tyler Granger thought he was moving into peace and quiet until Marjorie Ellis, the HOA president next door, began a silent war using an unmoving car, a missing license plate, and a decades-old plan to push neighbors out without ever saying a word. Tyler Granger had always imagined suburban life to be peaceful, neatly trimmed lawns, the distant hum of sprinklers, friendly waves from neighbors passing by on morning walks. After closing on his modest two-bedroom home in Willow Pines, he felt like he'd finally made it. The neighborhood looked like something out of a real estate brochure: white picket fences, quiet cul-de-sacs, and a strong sense of community held together by the ever-present Homeowners Association. Tyler didn't mind the rules. He appreciated order. After living in crowded city apartments for most of his 20s, this move felt like breathing clean air for the first time. The first few days passed uneventfully. Tyler unpacked, met a couple of neighbors, and started to settle into a new rhythm. But by the fifth morning, something had changed. A dark blue sedan was parked right in front of his driveway. It wasn't entirely blocking him in, just enough to make pulling out awkward, forcing him to reverse in a wide arc that scraped the edge of his lawn. He figured it was a visitor or maybe a contractor working nearby. No big deal, he thought. But the car didn't leave. Day after day, it remained parked in the same spot. No visible movement, no one getting in or out. The windows were tinted too dark to see inside, and oddly, there were no license plates on either end. Tyler began to feel uneasy. He waited a week before doing anything, hoping the owner would eventually move it. Then, on a quiet Saturday morning, he placed a sticky note under the windshield wiper. Nothing confrontational, just a friendly request asking if they could avoid blocking his driveway. 2 more days passed. The note was gone, but the car remained exactly where it was. Tyler started asking neighbors. The woman across the street hadn't seen anyone come or go. A man walking his dog said he thought it might belong to someone who lived nearby, but he wasn't sure. Nobody had any real answers. That's when Tyler noticed the house next door, the one with the neatly manicured lawn, ceramic gnomes near the porch, and a sign that read Willow Pines HOA President. It belonged to Marjorie Ellis. Tyler hadn't met her yet. He had seen her a few times from his kitchen window, always dressed neatly, clipboard in hand, walking slowly along the sidewalks like she was inspecting something. There was a stiffness about her, a kind of calculated calm. A few neighbors had warned him in passing to stay on her good side, but he hadn't had a reason to speak with her until now. He assumed she might help. After all, that's what HOA leaders were supposed to do: maintain peace and order in the neighborhood. Tyler sent her an email introducing himself and politely explaining the issue. He didn't accuse anyone, didn't demand anything, just asked if she knew who the car belonged to and if it could be moved. Her response came a few hours later. It was short, professional, and cold. She thanked him for reaching out, but said that street parking was public and that the HOA had no jurisdiction over it. If he had further concerns, she advised contacting the city. Tyler was stunned. Public or not, the car was making daily life difficult. And if this were any other vehicle, one with plates, with signs of regular use, he might have let it go. But this felt different. It wasn't just a parked car. It was immovable. It didn't come and go. It didn't serve a purpose. It just sat there day after day, like it had been placed deliberately. By now, Tyler had to plan his mornings around it. Some days he'd have to back out at a sharp angle to avoid brushing against the bumper. One rainy morning, his tire slid off the curb and into his own front yard, leaving deep tracks in the grass. It was more than an inconvenience. It was starting to feel personal. He tried calling the city, but without license plates or a clear violation, they couldn't help. They said he could report it as an abandoned vehicle, but that would trigger a slow process, warning tags, follow-ups, and a lengthy investigation before any action could be taken. Each morning, Tyler stared at that car with growing frustration. And each night, he watched it sit under the glow of the streetlight, unmoved and untouched. It had become a fixture, a silent blockade that seemed immune to logic or reason. And though he didn't realize it yet, that car was just the beginning. The house next door had always caught Tyler's eye. It was a near-perfect model of suburban pride, a pristine lawn without a single weed, a porch swing that never seemed to sway, and carefully arranged seasonal decorations that rotated like clockwork. It was the kind of place that looked staged, as if no one actually lived inside, but someone did. Marjorie Ellis, the president of the Willow Pines Homeowners Association, the one person who could have helped Tyler with the car issue, and the one person who clearly wouldn't. Marjorie had built a reputation in the neighborhood. People didn't talk about her in harsh tones, but in careful, respectful ones, like a teacher you never wanted to disappoint. She sent out monthly HOA newsletters with smiley clip art, but handed out citations like parking tickets. If your trash bins stayed out too long, you'd get a warning. If your lawn grew a little too wild, you'd be fined. The rules weren't just enforced, they were upheld with near-military precision. Yet somehow, the car outside Tyler's driveway remained immune. It didn't take long for Tyler to piece things together. The car belonged to Marjorie's daughter, Ashley. She had moved back in a few weeks before Tyler arrived, though she was rarely seen. Once, Tyler caught a glimpse of her from his upstairs window. Long dark hair, a pale expression, and a habit of moving quickly between the car and the house. She never made eye contact, never waved. She just slipped in and out like a shadow. But her car was a constant presence, and despite its condition, dusty windows, worn tires, it was oddly well maintained. Tyler started to notice a pattern. Around sunset, Ashley would come outside with a cloth and a spray bottle. She'd wipe down the hood, clean the mirrors, and then vanish. The car never moved an inch. It just sat there, day after day, as if anchored to the curb. One evening, Tyler took a walk past the car and casually glanced inside. There was a paper sign taped to the rear window from the inside. It read, "Not for sale, do not tow." There were no plates, no parking permit, just a message that raised more questions than it answered. When Tyler sent a follow-up email to Marjorie, she replied even more briefly than before. Her tone was dismissive, her words clipped. She reiterated that the street was public and that Tyler should contact city services if he had concerns. Then, as if to underline her point, she CC'd the HOAs legal liaison, making it clear the conversation was over. But the enforcement around the neighborhood told a different story. Tyler noticed that other residents were still being cited for minor infractions. A neighbor down the street got a warning for having a non-HOA-approved garden gnome. Another received a fine for using non-matching fence panels during a minor repair. Tyler couldn't help but see the hypocrisy. If Marjorie could control mailbox, paint, and yard decor, surely she had some say in whether a broken-down, unregistered vehicle could sit outside a driveway for over a month. Still, no one spoke up. Neighbors avoided the subject or offered vague sympathy. Some even looked uncomfortable when Tyler brought it up, as if challenging Marjorie meant crossing an invisible line no one dared touch. The HOA wasn't just an organization here, it was a power structure, and Marjorie stood at the top. Tyler began to feel isolated. His dream home was becoming a daily source of anxiety. Every time he stepped outside, he was reminded of the silent standoff happening on his own curb. And it wasn't just the inconvenience, it was the principle. He had followed the rules. He had tried to be polite. But in return, he was being dismissed, ignored, and effectively punished for daring to question the system. Something about the whole situation felt off. It wasn't just about favoritism or a bad neighbor. There was an intentional quality to it, like the car was being used, not forgotten. Like it was meant to be there. And the more he thought about it, the more Tyler began to suspect he was part of a game he didn't understand. It wasn't just a blocked driveway anymore. It was a message. One that said, stay quiet, stay in line, or pay the price. But Tyler wasn't wired that way. And with each passing day, his patience thinned and his curiosity deepened. He wasn't just going to let this slide, not when it felt like something deeper was hiding beneath the surface. All he needed was one crack in the facade. Something to tell him that what he was feeling wasn't just paranoia. And that crack would come sooner than he expected. By the 6th week, Tyler had stopped hoping the car would disappear on its own. It had become a permanent part of the landscape, a silent fixture in front of his driveway that mocked him with its stillness. Every morning he walked past it, every evening he drove around it, and every night he stared at it from his window, wondering why no one else seemed to care. He knew something wasn't right, and he was done waiting for someone else to notice. That's when he decided to set up a camera. It wasn't anything fancy, just a small, motion-activated security camera mounted above his garage, angled down toward the street. At first, he just wanted proof that the car wasn't being moved, but deep down, he hoped for more. He needed a reason, some sign that this wasn't just an oversight or an inconvenience, but something intentional. The footage began recording the following day. For hours, it showed nothing but sunlight shifting across the pavement and the occasional dog walker passing by. But then, late one night, it captured movement. Tyler watched the clip the next morning, his eyes glued to the screen dot. It was Ashley. She came out just after midnight, barefoot, her long hair loose around her shoulders. She approached the car slowly, carrying a rag in one hand and a bottle in the other. The video had no sound, but it didn't need any. Her movements were calm, almost methodical. She cleaned the windshield first, then the side mirrors, and finally crouched down to wipe the tires. The way she did it was strange, like it wasn't about maintenance, but ritual. When she finished, she stood there for a moment, just looking at the car, then turned and disappeared back into the house. The car never moved. It just sat there, spotless. Tyler rewound the footage and paused it. He zoomed in on the back window. The same sign was still there. Not for sale, do not tow. It wasn't handwritten. It had been printed, bold black letters on crisp white paper. That small detail stuck with him. Someone had taken the time to make it look official. Someone wanted to send a message. He started watching every night's footage. Ashley would come out once every few nights, always around the same time, always with the same quiet purpose. She never got in the car, never started the engine, never even opened a door. Just cleaned it, observed it, and returned inside, like the car was more than just transportation. Like it was a symbol or a warning. That week, Tyler noticed something else. A delivery driver stopped in front of his house to drop off a package. The driver hesitated, looking at the car, then took a photo of it before driving off. It was a quick action, barely noticeable, but it confirmed Tyler wasn't the only one who found it strange. People noticed. They just didn't say anything. Late Thursday night, a yellow envelope appeared on Tyler's welcome mat. No return address. No markings. Inside was a single piece of paper, printed in plain black ink. The message read, "You're not the first. She's done this before. Check property records." That was it. No name. No hint of who sent it. But it confirmed what Tyler had begun to suspect. There was a pattern. The next morning, Tyler logged into the county's property records database. It didn't take long to find what he was looking for. Over the past 3 years, 2 other homes in the neighborhood had sold under strange circumstances. In both cases, the owners had lived there for less than 6 months before abruptly listing. The addresses, both on the same cul-de-sac, both directly across from or beside Marjorie Ellis's house. Digging deeper, Tyler found something even more unsettling. The buyer for both properties was the same real estate LLC, a company registered out of state, with no website, no phone number, and no contact name. But the mailing address tied back to a small PO box registered under a name Tyler recognized. Ellis Property Management. The pieces clicked together. The car wasn't just a nuisance. It was a tactic, a method of pressure, a subtle, deniable way to make a neighbor's life just uncomfortable enough to push them out. And now, Tyler was the latest target. The realization hit hard. This wasn't just about a driveway. It was about control. And if he didn't fight back, he knew exactly how this would end, just like the others. A quiet listing, a quiet sale, and another win for Marjorie and her silent scheme. But Tyler wasn't going to be the next name on her list. Tyler barely slept the night he connected the dots. The quiet hum of the suburban evening outside his window felt more sinister than soothing. He lay awake, replaying the footage in his mind, the image of Ashley meticulously cleaning the unmoving car, the anonymous letter's stark message, and the unmistakable link between the Ellis name and the property records. It was no longer a theory. It was a strategy, a deliberate one. And he was caught in the middle of it. The following morning, Tyler printed everything. Screenshots from the day, video footage, a summary of the property records, and even copies of the citations other neighbors had received. He placed them all in a folder, labeled it Incident Documentation, and tucked it under his arm as he walked towards City Hall. If the HOA wouldn't act, someone else had to. At the local municipal office, Tyler met with a city code enforcement officer. He presented the folder and explained his situation. The officer listened patiently, flipping through the papers with growing concern. The lack of license plates, the extended parking period, the repeated complaints, it all added up to a likely violation. More importantly, the officer recognized the name Marjorie Ellis. She had submitted several complaints to the city herself. In the past, always meticulous, always demanding. Now the complaints were coming in against her. The officer agreed to open an investigation. The first step would be tagging the vehicle as abandoned. Once tagged, the owner would have 48 hours to remove it. If not, it would be towed. Tyler left the building feeling a cautious flicker of hope. It wasn't over, but the process had finally started. Back in the neighborhood, things felt different. For the first time in weeks, Tyler noticed Marjorie watching him from her window. No smile, no wave, just a long, cold stare. He didn't look away. The unspoken tension had finally surfaced. She knew he had gone to the city, and she wasn't pleased. That evening, the orange tag appeared on the car's windshield. A large, unavoidable sticker that declared the vehicle abandoned and subject to removal. Tyler watched from his living room window, waiting to see how Marjorie or her daughter would react. Hours passed. Nothing. No one came outside. The car remained still, as if daring the city to act. The next day, Tyler checked the footage again. No one had touched the sticker. Ashley hadn't come out. No signs of cleaning. No sign of her at all. On the second morning, just before the 48-hour deadline, a tow truck rolled into the cul-de-sac. It wasn't loud or dramatic. The driver worked quickly, hooking up the sedan and lifting it onto the flatbed with quiet efficiency. Tyler stood at his window, watching the car that had become a symbol of pressure and control finally disappear from in front of his home. Then he noticed her Marjorie was standing by her mailbox, arms crossed tightly, watching the scene unfold. Her face was pale with tension. Her lips didn't move. She didn't yell or plead. She just watched, like a chess player realizing too late that a pawn had made it across the board. As the tow truck drove away, she turned and walked back into her house, door slamming shut behind her. But the story didn't end there. Later that evening, Tyler received a message from one of his neighbors, someone he barely knew but who had apparently followed everything closely from a distance. The message simply read, "Thank you. Took guts to do what you did. People have been afraid to say anything for years." Word spread quickly. By the end of the week, several neighbors gathered informally at Tyler's driveway. They shared stories. Little things at first unexplained fines, complaints that seemed petty but carried consequences. Then bigger ones, lost appeals, ignored. Requests, constant citations that felt more like punishments than policy. One resident revealed that they, too, had received an anonymous letter before moving out months earlier, but didn't want to risk upsetting the HOA. Another confessed they always assumed Marjorie manipulated situations behind the scenes but lacked proof. But now, Tyler had given them a blueprint. A petition formed, calling for a review of the HOA leadership. Meetings followed. Voices that had once been quiet were now loud. Evidence was gathered, and within a month, a vote was held. Marjorie was removed from her position. She didn't attend. The final meeting, no farewell speech, no explanation. Just silence. The car never returned. Ashley was rarely seen again. And as the weeks passed, the cul-de-sac felt like it had shed something heavy, something that had sat beneath the surface. For far too long, Tyler's driveway was finally clear. But more importantly, so was the illusion that no one could fight back. The days after the vote felt like a storm had passed through willow pines, one not made of rain or wind, but of tension, control, and silence. For the first time since he moved in, Tyler felt the neighborhood breathe. Lawns still got mowed, sprinklers still clicked on at dawn, and porch lights still flicked off one by one each night. But underneath the quiet normalcy, something had shifted. The spell that had once made everyone afraid to speak had broken. Without Marjorie Ellis at the helm of the HOA, the community took on a new tone. The remaining board members held a special meeting to restructure responsibilities. Policies that had been enforced with near-religious zeal were reviewed and softened. The citations stopped. Neighbors who had kept to themselves for years began to speak again. Tyler was invited to backyard barbecues, waved at by residents who had once pretended not to see him, and even asked to join the new HOA advisory group. He politely declined. He didn't want to run anything, he just wanted peace. But peace, he soon realized wasn't something easily earned. Not after what had happened. One quiet Sunday morning, Tyler found a manila envelope on his doorstep. No name, no note. Inside were copies of letters, complaints, warnings, and internal HOA memos, some dating back years. Many were written by Marjorie, some by board members who had since stepped down. The contents were clear. Marjorie had kept files on nearly every resident, documenting their violations, complaints, and even personal disputes. There was one file labeled Granger that included copies of Tyler's original email about the King car with handwritten notes in the margins. One of them read, "Persistent, could be a problem." Tyler stared at the paper, stunned. It confirmed what he had always suspected. Marjorie hadn't just been protecting her daughter's car. She had been watching him, planning the unease returned like a cold breeze. Even though she was gone, her presence lingered. Her house next door remained dark and quiet. Ashley hadn't been seen in weeks. Occasionally, Tyler thought he saw movement. Through the blinds, just a flicker of shadow, the kind that made your pulse quicken even when you told yourself it was nothing. Some nights, he replayed the footage from the garage camera. Not because he expected to find something new, but because the silence in his home felt too deep. One night, just after midnight, the motion sensor triggered. Tyler checked the feed. The front lawn was empty. But there, parked across the street directly in front of his driveway, but close, was a dark sedan. Not the same one, but similar. It was gone by morning. He didn't report it. He didn't tell the neighbors. It could have been a coincidence, a visitor, a delivery driver. That's what he told himself. But he began locking his doors earlier. He closed the blinds before dusk. He kept the camera running 24/7. Weeks passed. The community moved on. The HOA sent out its first newsletter under new leadership, welcoming, positive, free of legal jargon. Tyler kept it on his fridge like a souvenir. People were happy, free even. But Tyler? He remained watchful. One afternoon, while trimming his hedge, he noticed something in the storm drain near the curb. A scrap of white paper, barely visible. He pulled it out. It was water-damaged and torn, but still legible. It was the same kind of paper that had once been taped inside Ashley's car. The message read, "Not for SALE, do not tow." He stared at it for a long time. The letters were faded, the edges frayed, but it was unmistakably the same. Whether it had fallen there months ago or been placed there recently, he didn't know. He tucked it into a drawer and didn't mention it to anyone. Tyler never parked in front of his own driveway again. He left that space open, always. Maybe out of habit, maybe out of fear. The car was gone. The power was broken. But the memory of what had been done and how calculated it had all been never left him. Some battles end quietly, not with a bang, but with a heavy stillness. And sometimes, even after you win, a part of you keeps looking over your shoulder, waiting to see if the game ever really ended. Tyler had learned the hard way. Not every war is fought loudly. Some arrive on four wheels, never move, and leave without a sound. And sometimes that's more terrifying than anything else.